Namaskar. And like a true Silicon Valleyite, I am doing a cost benefit analysis for both the countries, US and India. What does US have? What does US need? What does India have? And what does India need? So I put together all this with the help of a couple of my volunteers who usually don't like their name mentioned, but my naman to both of you who put together all this stuff. And I'm going to just run through this slide deck and you'll be able to catch most of the stuff that I'm talking about. If you have a doubt, go back and watch this video again to get better clarity. Here we go. So Modi's US state visit. State visit has a different connotation. It is one where the state itself gives out the visit. Modi has come to US many times, but under different reasons, for different reasons. He has come to address the UN General Assembly a few times and so on and so forth. But when the state visit comes, then there is a state dinner. He gets to address the joint house of Congress and Senate. So it's a much more pomp and ceremony and circumstance, if you will. So there's a lot more importance also associated with it. So we know that a lot of deals are being talked about, but we are going to get into the meat of all that stuff here in this slide deck. So what to make out of Modi? This is the United States confusion from our perspective. Autocrat or not an autocrat? Is he a dost or a dushman? Believe own fake news, that is like what gets dished out in New York Times, Washington Post, USCIRF, or try to listen to what their internal, like for example, the US Embassy in India says to get a better perspective on things. Or are they also listening to left liberals like Jack Dorsey and Rana Ayub? Or are they listening to Twitter, such as Musk and company, Matt Taibbi? So there has been a lot of poking of holes at some of the perceptions that Twitter used to have in the past. Now, also, BJP's agenda is confusing to USA. Is it socialist or capitalist? Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is more socialist. Capitalist is Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Prayas. So this is where things stand as far as the big picture is concerned. Now, if you look at the individual leaders and their popularity, Narendra Modi is right at the top with 77% approving his functioning, whereas Biden is in 40%. Here is where the number one popular leader versus number 10th popular leader, which happens to be Joe Biden. Joe Biden's popularity is 40%. Now, if you look at the economic trajectory, India is growing at 7.2%. Well, some may have some doubts about this. Is it current or it's constant GDP? And the numbers may be inflated a little bit. But take a look at how much it is for the United States. It's at 2.6%. In fact, that itself might be inflated. People are saying US has entered recession, if not just about to enter one. And look at the approval rating. Biden started out at around 57 or so, and now he is at 41.2%. So what exactly is happening with the Democratic Party and the Biden administration? Many Democrats think that, or at least a former Congress staffer, Matt Robinson, thinks that Democrats have disillusioned and confused voters by over-promising and under-delivering. Now, if you take a look at this whole meeting from a US foreign policy perspective, what are the things that Biden might want to keep? Domestic manufacturing, international trade, technology coalitions, climate change, multilateral development institutions. Now, what does US want to do? US wants to compete with China vigorously. They want to reboot some of the traditional alliances. They want to build new partnerships and new regional and global coalitions. You're seeing the things like I2U2, Quad, all these things fall under that. Now, India, on the other side, is looking at the following things. It wants to do domestic manufacturing, improve that to create jobs, better international trade, technology transfer, Atmanirbharta. The Modi administration completely understands Sun Tzu's art of war that China is practicing, conflict and commerce always going together. And it also understands that it needs to improve its infrastructure, logistics, supply chains. That's why you're seeing all these road and Sagarmala and all those other projects that India is doing at a frenetic pace, I must say, multilateral development institutions. So these are the things that India's national interests are. And India's geoeconomic agenda is defense and energy security. Now, there's now adequate evidence that China is also helping Pakistan. So there's could be a 2 or a 2.5 country conflict against India? How prepared is India? What are the things that it needs to do? It also wants to consolidate new alliances. It has strategic ambivalence with a few things, few countries. At the same time, it wants to avoid conflict at all costs. For example, it is believed that under the Modi administration, 4,000 square kilometers of land has been sliced up for China using salami tactics. India has not pushed back strong enough. It has not driven out all these people. It has done it in one or two places, Pangong, for example, but not everywhere. So this is a constant needling problem. Deterrence connect to ROW for the rest of the world further. This is what India wants to do. What does US want from India? The way US looks at India is it's got a huge youth population and that demographic can pay US a dividend. What it wants to do is it wants to find a market for American products such as defense, technology, services, etc. It wants to also keep the pot boiling by building more breaking India forces, regime weaknesses. So you've seen this thing. I mean, on the one side, US will always say that it's a great partner of India, but many churches from US are the ones who are actually funding much of the conversion racket that is taking place in India. In fact, now they've become quite sophisticated. They don't send money as a donation. They are trying to make it look as if there's a software company in India that is giving them services, and then they pay that down by way of saying that, okay, these are the services you have given, this is what we are paying you, when all it is the same money is going to be used for conversion. So this is one of the ways they are doing it. So there is always keep the pot boiling approach. Also, they would like India to vote alongside US on many of the issues in places like the United Nations, and it also wants to keep an eye on India, if you will. Now, what are the challenges that US faces? Unskilled manpower. India's deflationary labor pool for US economy. Any company you talk to who has had dealings with India, they say that yes, the labor cost is cheap, but the delivery time is also more, and the quality of delivery also leaves a lot to be desired. So this is something that India needs to concentrate on. I wish companies like Infosys would take their 6-month training schedule and give it back to some of the universities that they can handpick and say, okay, you guys teach this thing so that we can absorb them into the workforce. Even if we can't absorb them, they are as individuals fit to join any other company. This kind of altruism is expected, but I don't know if Infosys will do that. I was just giving you an example that it is something that Infosys, which prides itself on that 6-month training that they impart to their incoming freshmen, doesn't matter which field of science you are from, and they believe that that's what makes those engineers well marketable. So now India is also frenetically becoming self-reliant in its arms and ammunitions, and it wants to make sure that in case there's a war, it is not struck for want of part, because you can't plan campaigns that way. And it wants to do skilled manpower to serve American tech companies and block other nations out of this well-kept secret. So this is the other problem. Once something attains a certain amount of saturation, if those businesses go away from India to lesser cost nations, like for example, if you think about medical transcriptions, what used to be done in India is now being done in Philippines and in Bangladesh, lower cost countries. So India needs to go up the food chain and value chain in order for it to keep getting these lucrative jobs for its employees. What does India want from the USA? The main asset that India has is that it has human capital and it is a superpower. It wants to build trust deficit first, a clean breakaway from the past, stop regime weakening, terrorist activity, stop bullying and supporting foreign interferences. So this is something that US speaks with a forked tongue. This is what India sees, that, on the one side, you'll see this thing, Department of State, it knows fully well that some of its statements are not true, yet they persist. And sometimes they stick it to India by bringing an Indian American spokesperson to make those kinds of doozy statements. Well, it's also the art of strategic ambiguity, I guess. The only thing is India hasn't done this thing, but maybe it's now going to do the same thing to US also. So dish it back what you are getting. Anyway, so that's just a nuance. Growth capital. Invest like you mean it, not mere words. Don't stop other nations from investing, such as Japan and UAE. So this is India telling US, look, if you really mean it, invest right. I'll give you an example. India hopes to get aircraft engine manufacturing technology from GE. Now, India is saying that you need to invest at least 70 to 85% of the the final product should be made in India, and there is some pushback. For example, these engines have something new, family jewels, if you will, called crystal blade technology. And I believe, and I don't know if this is true or not, but many have told me that this is indeed true, that the GE unit, Pratt and Whitney, is unwilling to share the making of the crystal blades. So the engine will be done, but the blades will have to be bought from US. It's got a hook for India. So that is something, these are things that happen. You have to work your way through these some of these wrinkles. Now, in technology transfer, like I said, not everything you are going to get the way you want it. And also, India needs to ramp up its cyber security. The fact that China could threaten India and carry out the threat by taking the power grid off of Mumbai for 13 hours, I haven't seen India go back and do the same thing in like Shanghai, for example. If India can do that, then that would give the message to China, don't M with us anymore. So this is where things start. But in terms of economies, if you look at GDP, not per capita income, India will not look very good. But if you look at the nation's GDP, India is now fifth in terms of USD, in terms of what you call nominal GDP in measured in US dollars. India is number 5, but India may start going up higher and higher depending upon how well its economy is going to do. So this is the upward mobility because of its growth potential. What will India do in its mental space? What does it do? It has to do reconciliation of the past and force some guarantees. In 1971, there was a Bangladesh liberation, Pakistan, Kashmir, tacit Khalistani, Aam Aadmi Party, Breaking India support. All these things have been highlighted, but not much was done on the US side. But now I'm seeing some difference. The National Investigative Agency is actually being allowed to come to United States and probe what happened in its consulate. It's also going to Canada. It has also been into UK. So these are new developments where these countries are giving India a free hand to do the investigation. And what happens as a follow-up, I think they will have to be tried using the local laws. But what will happen is some of the egregious visa allowances where the judge just looks at something and not going to depth of what the FIRs in India were registered against certain individuals, all that stuff will go away. It will at least reduce the number of terrorists coming from India and seeking asylum in the United States. It is hoped that that will happen, but this needs a lot of work from the investigative agency, NIA, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. National interests are supreme. These are always the sticking point. What does it, as a nation, what is of interest to me and what is it that's of interest to United States? And just sending Valentine cards or greeting each other, that's just lip service. That doesn't mean much. Handle the relationship carefully. There are some tech bourgeois who tend to get over enthusiastic about things. I think there is a reality associated with it. It is not easy to take a company and run it successfully from India, except for a few exceptions. And that is where the problem is. Like if you take, for instance, same thing, GE engine manufacturing, a lot of subsidiary units have to come up around that so that they can give critical parts to the quality that GE requires. Until that happens, there's going to be a problem. And these are all, airline engine parts. These have to be of the highest quality. So some of these challenges have to be looked at. The Indian new muscular security policy needs to be recognized by US, and they say, okay, well, we will help you also rather than hinder you. Now, the expected statement that comes at the end of this summit between Modi and Biden, they are going to be, people are going to be parsing through that. For example, India wants the engines from GE for its Tejas aircraft, for its next generation fighter aircraft. India also wants some Predator drones, and what will it do with the Predator drones? We have to see, because I think India feels that it needs those to be able to use them not only as just for visual aerial screening, but also to have a payload of missiles in case it gets attacked from either Pakistan or from China. Now, the thing that perhaps US needs to look at is stop looking at India as somebody who is a cheap source of labor. India can give you good quality product, but there is always this give and take, which is where I'm coming in. That this H1 visas, the way it is being done now, is being it's not going to move the needle for US. US has a real labor problem. Many people who suffered from COVID passed away. These are all in their prime. They have passed away. They've taken their experience. So US has huge gaps in its manufacturing cycles, in its company structure in many companies, and many people who are at the lower end are perhaps too weak to rejoin workforce. This is sort of like a war that has happened to itself, and US needs good quality support, and for that India needs to be able to step up to the plate and say, okay, we can have a labor services exchange agreement whereby you can give 3-year, 4-year work visas, and there's a way for them to be absorbed into the mainstream of United States workforce. I don't know if this is going to be finalized, but certainly I've heard talks being made around this particular topic. Now, there is a lot of other things that needs to be done. India needs to make sure that US stops taking pot shots at it from various ways. And first, unfortunately for India, when I say 2.5 country war against India, the half is internal. There have been so many left liberal, communist, woke mindset people that just believe that it is their birthright to oppose India at every step of the way, even when it does something good for them. So these kinds of things have to be stopped, and a lot of these things are fanned by the West, which thinks that it can keep India's pot boiling, that way it can stop India from growing fast. Now the need is much more dire for the West, whether it is Sweden or some of the Scandinavian countries or UK or the EU. All of them are in need for some critical skilled labor, and India can provide that. And for that, they need to make sure that everybody gets what they need and that there is not too much of competition. At the same time, it's something where needs meet wants. What is India's mindset? India should not think of this as a Deng Xiaoping Nixon movement, or something where India is going to completely open itself for trade from US. I don't think that's going to happen. US has had much more success in China, and for that China has also responded by doing maniacal execution. Can India match that? Modi has proven in the past that he can get the country moving. We have to wait and see. This is going to be a much bigger challenge because a lot of high paying jobs are going to be on the line. That means the risks are high, the rewards are high, but people will try and sabotage that. India needs to be watchful for that. So these are all the things. I'm not going to go through every bullet point on the slide. You guys know. Now, this is the other thing. Hindu Rashtra, Hinduness, Hindutva. These are all people who don't even know what it is. They are just regurgitating what India's secular liberals, who themselves are idiots as far as knowledge of Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism are concerned, and they swallow it hook, line and sinker, whatever nonsense one or two ideologues put out. And this is how this has grown to this level. Unfortunately, from the period 2004 to 2014, this was fanned in a big way, and now this monster needs to be slayed. The monster of fake narrative. And I don't know how much US will help India in that, but certainly institutions such as P Gurus, we are trying to show them the mirror and say that these are all lies. You have built them all on lies. So please stop this thing now. Well, this is the last slide that I wanted to show you. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick. Well, this is the question that I'm going to leave everyone with. What is going to happen? How much India is going to take away and how much US is going to get from this is something that we'll be watching closely. I'm going to have 3 single day sessions where every day's progress is going to be looked at. Adel Nazarian and I will be looking at that. So we'll keep you posted. Do like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.